Good evening, everyone, here from Finland. And we are on our webinar 149 and our reading number 89. We're beginning on page 151 of the Glamour book. And we're going to focus just on a paragraph here from the Glamour book and an additional short compilation on Imperil, as Master Moria has named it and as the Tibetan has elaborated upon it. I just want to welcome you and okay, well, there's someone on a special number, so I don't know who that is. And hi, Alex and Anne and Annette and Britta and Carl, Catherine, Cindy, Francois, Frederick, Jesse, Joe Garceau, also Joan and Johi and Karen, Kim, Leslie, Lori and Lorraine, and Mariana and Martha, Nathalie, and Yanka and Olivia, Peg, Risto, Suzanne, Tia, and Vicky, and Winnie, and Zenaidi, and Anne Veronica. And over here on the other side, Michael and BL and Joe Waltz, keeping things on a steady and even keel. Okay. We'll do the great invocation at the closing, and just to align with an inner source of wisdom, however you do that. And we'll begin our reading about this factor called Imperil. It can be used as a noun, which is unusual, and that's how Master M usually uses it, and Master DK also, or as a verb. Occasionally they do that. So DK is telling us, I would, and this is page 151, I would also like at this point to touch upon a factor of real importance in this work and to repeat my earlier warning. He does talk about factors which the sensitive disciple has to take into consideration. Will you remember that the effort to free yourselves from irritation, or from what is called in Agni Yoga imperil, a peculiar yet satisfying word, my brothers. This is interesting because so often, with Master DK, he doesn't at all feel satisfied with the words that he is compelled to use because of the English language. So when he says it's satisfying, then we know it has value to express what he intends. So the effort to free ourselves is particularly essential for this group, and this is the Observers of Reality group, the second of the seed groups which he was cultivating. Irritation is exceedingly prevalent these days of nervous tension, and it most definitely imperils. Now there he uses it as a verb, and it most definitely imperils progress and retards the steps of the disciple upon the way. Somewhere in these books, he speaks of the Christ in terms of a state of mind, which can be called, I think he calls it calmness, forever unperturbed. Calmness, forever unperturbed. I mean, it's quite different from the factor that we are now going to take up. So it retards our steps upon the way. It can produce dangerous group tension if present in any of you, and this induced group tension can interfere with the free play of the power and light which you are supposed to use even when the other group members remain unconscious of the emanating source. DK is always remarking about how the unnoticed attitude of the disciple in a group contributes to the good or to the not so good. So he sees subjectively exactly what we are contributing to the group process. And even though these factors are invisible to other group members, to him they are definitely important, and he tells us about them. I mean, or at least he told his students about them and identified them and wanted them to take corrective action. Irritation definitely generates a poison which locates itself in the region of the stomach and of the solar plexus. Well, let's say Mars, the normal ruler of the solar plexus for average humanity, is a planet that induces friction and irritation. You kind of wonder how Alice Bailey survived all that. She had Mars rising in Leo. Well, I think she was, with her first-rate personality, kind of a commanding presence, and she had a great sense of humor, so the story goes, which can offset a lot of the irritability that maybe goes with group work in which the group members are not quite schooled regarding its danger. So irritation definitely generates a poison which locates itself in the region of the stomach and the solar plexus. Probably a lot of those digestive issues and stomach ulcers and other problems there are aided and abetted by this factor of imperil. Irritation is a disease, if I might use that word, of the solar plexus center, and it is definitely contagious to an alarming extent. And we've all been in groups where I think Moria talks about irritation spreading like pepper dust in the group field, and everybody starts to sneeze. So I think we know something about how catching it can be. Definitely contagious to an almost alarming extent. Okay. So, my brothers, watch yourselves with care, and remember that just insofar as you can live in the head and in the heart, I guess not the solar plexus, you will end the disease of imperil and aid in the transference of forces of the solar plexus into the heart center. Well, think of it. Somewhere between the first and second initiation, this transference from solar plexus to heart is really activated. Now, if you are a disciple, esoterically inclined, even a true aspirant, your solar plexus is ruled not so much by Mars, or at least there's a contest going on in your solar plexus center between Mars and Neptune. So you'll see, those lists on page 517 of esoteric astrology, the centers and the planetary rulers of those centers, chakras, for the average human being, non-aspiring, and then for the aspirant and disciple, the spiritually inclined person. Things are probably more tranquil when the solar plexus is ruled by Neptune than when it's ruled by Mars. And in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, he deals with a lower point within the solar plexus, which is Martian, and a higher point within the solar plexus, which is Neptunian, and more akin to the heart vibration. Neptune is interesting because it has, in all probability, a sixth ray soul and definitely a second ray monad. So you can see how that transference could work out from the sixth ray solar plexus to the second ray heart center. Anyway, we can't really take the second initiation until the light of Venus, the aspiration of Neptune, and the inclusiveness of Jupiter have done their work. In your esoteric astrology book, page 70 and 71, you will find those planets which are active in the taking of various initiations. And as you see, Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter, all of them, but in different places, have a very strong second ray, which is what is supposed to begin conditioning the astral body of the initiate of the second degree. So it's a struggle with Mars and Pluto before that initiation can be taken, and you can enter the stream, as it were, and be borne along via the ashram, toward the ashram, or you can still suffer in the anxiety and conflict of the lesser planets. But Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune are all involved in making the second initiation a fact in your life. Now, what is over here is where I'm going to stop the reading specifically in the Glamour book and turn to this little compilation. Michael reminded me that we had this to deal with, so I just brought a few things together. Not long. There's 8 references, and I think 2 of them are not on our subject. So here is the first one. These are all a question of the factors to which the disciple is sensitive. I'm not sure what are the preceding 4, the astral or emotional vortex that humanity lives in, and then the glamour on the astral plane produced by the cry of humanity and the spiritual energies of the planetary logos and the retreating forces of evil. So that's quite a mixture. The stimulation to which the lower vehicles of the disciple are unavoidably subjected. The disciple is sensitive to that, and the evocation also of a strong sense of the soul within the personality. All of these are factors to which the disciple is sensitive. And then comes the fifth point, which is this imperil that we've been discussing. And as we, as we discuss this, or at least read from it, you can make notes to yourself as to the degree to which you find that you suffer occasionally or more consistently from imperil. But let's, further refine the word. Not every casual loss of temper is necessarily the kind of imperil that Master DK is discussing. So here is that fifth point regarding that to which the disciple is subjected because of his or her sensitivity. The danger of imperil, as Master Moria called it. And I hope I have the right. Yes, I do. This is somewhat erroneously interpreted as irritation by the neophyte. So, he's giving a different point of view here, isn't he? But it is not, in fact, irritation in the ordinary connotation of the word. And actually, when I first read this, I found it, a little bit surprising because there are so many, undesirable effects of even ordinary irritation. And DK does comment upon ordinary irritation as well. But in this particular, this particular paragraph, which is taken from Discipleship 2, page 68, he goes at it in a different way. The surface ripples of ordinary irritation and the evanescent angers, they are fleeting, evanescent angers to which all disciples are prone, all disciples are relatively of small importance. They pass, and in the sum total of the soul's attitudes to the personality evoke no response or registration whatsoever. Basically, DK does emphasize the idea that the soul on its own plane, and by that we do mean a higher being who is supervising the development of the extended monad, the monad in extension, our self, as it were, projected down into the lower worlds. We have a supervisor, but the supervisor doesn't really pay attention to a lot of the things that we think it might attend to. It doesn't register. It's not really important to that overshadowing being that is part of our consciousness or has extended itself in some measure into our consciousness on the higher mental plane. What is referred to is the reaction of the disciple to world evil. Now, this is really a different point of view, isn't it? When DK gives a keener definition of imperil, it is the reaction, regarding the reaction of the disciple to world evil. This produces uncertainty as to the future, annoyance as to what is being done throughout the planet by excuse me, non-disciples, criticism of national and international planning, and a general atmosphere of unhappiness, plus a sense of superior knowledge. Not very desirable reactions, right? All this is expressed in a negative, unconstructive manner. Now, that's something, this little part is something we really need to review. The reaction of the disciple to world evil, producing uncertainty, lack of confidence regarding the future, annoyance with others, especially non-disciples who are handling things in a way that we may regard as stupid, or whatever, destructive, however we criticize it. Criticism of what the countries are doing, nationally and internationally, and just the very opposite of the joy of the soul, which the disciple should be experiencing. With Master Moria, we have to review the sentence, "It is a joy to do the Master's work." Well, when we have that general atmosphere of unhappiness, and we've all been prone to it, he says, where is the joy? Plus, of course, that which separates us from those others we criticize, our sense of superior knowledge. And he once told us that if we have a kind of a pleased, satisfied attitude from receiving the information he's given first, before others have received it, we thereby prove our own unworthiness. To this, many disciples are today prone, not necessarily all. They need to realize that world affairs are not and cannot be molded or determined by any hierarchical knowledge in the possession of the disciple. Now, isn't that an interesting point? World affairs, we have all of this esoteric knowledge, and at least expressed outwardly, we cannot seek to mold world affairs in that objective manner using hierarchical information. Maybe behind the scenes we can do something, and he's given us methods of operating behind the scenes. World affairs and conditions have necessarily to be based upon the demand and the point in evolution of the mass of humanity working through their representatives, chosen or imposed in every country. I think he's talking here about maybe the difference between democracies and dictatorships, not all of which are bad. In the case of Ataturk, he has almost nothing but praise for that man, except perhaps for a few personality foibles that are negligible. And usually when we look at those particular foibles, we make a mountain out of a molehill, he had a problem with alcohol, he had a problem with women, he had, but the way DK looks at it, that was negligible. And he was more of a dictator for a long time. Okay. So the decisions about how to conduct a nation have to be worked through by the mass of humanity. And that will depend upon their point in evolution and not upon some kind of prestigious hierarchical perspective adopted by the learned aspirant or the learned disciple. So this demand can be and is affected, modified, and spiritualized by the attitude and the teaching of disciples everywhere who are vocal and of humanitarian instinct. So we don't necessarily come out with a bunch of hierarchical information when trying to persuade towards a better way. And now the next thing is really interesting, and you'll have to see whether you agree with it, because after all, we go back to the Plato's Republic and his philosopher king. It seems like a lot of people who have strong Aquarius, like Sir Thomas More and Francis Bacon, and I think also Plato, I believe, do write their utopias, and they envision a better way. The question is it practical, and can they do it? And usually the resistance of humanity is due to all the, glamours and illusions, is inhibitory of the best ideas of these utopians, at least at this time. But let's see what kind of utopias emerge during the age of Aquarius. Certainly it will be an idea prominent. If, however, the will and knowledge of disciples in all nations were to condition world affairs and control entirely the political, economic, and social life of the people, it would produce a far more serious cleavage than now exists. If our ideas expressed in the esoteric manner and with esoteric values in mind and overlooking many of the desires of the masses of people, a far more serious cleavage than now exists. For example, for instance, between the rich and the poor, or between the classes and the castes. It would produce a pronounced line of demarcation between the kingdom of God, which is, meant to be the kingdom of soul expression upon the earth, between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of men. And this would run counter to hierarchical intention, which is rapidly healing the existing breach and thus offset the work which the Christ set out to do on earth. So we can see why, can't we, that this kind of ideal that some hold of everything being really run by disciples who promote hierarchical values in a way that is unmoderated would run counter to the plan. This impressed me when I read it, and when he said that it will be a long time before the average human being is ready for the teaching of occultism. Well, at the young age that I read it, I said, well, why? Why? It's the best. Why not teach that in an outward way to everybody? But of course, for the very reason that a pronounced line of demarcation between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of men, the fifth kingdom and the fourth kingdom, would be the result, and thus run counter to the plan and counter to that which Christ's plans to accomplish with his reappearance. This point is often overlooked by well-intentioned disciples. It is humanity which determines its own destiny. Disciples point the way, indicate the vision, and tactfully so, We cannot, look at the way the teaching of Alice Bailey has been defamed by, Orthodox believing church people, as some kind of example of satanic policy. You have only to read the paranoia that is surrounding the Alice Bailey teaching. And even, there was that unfortunate incident in which that same kind of paranoia came from Madame Roerich at a certain point. We don't know what happened. Philip Lindsay did a good analysis of Madame Roerich's horoscope and pointed out the seeds of the trouble. But they are supposed to be working together. And maybe, on the inner plane, all of that has been straightened out. But it's so easy to look at the good and imagine, because it is different from the good that you conceive, that it is the bad. So, in her opinion, the Tibetan was a member of the Black Lodge. Ridiculous, but even disciples are subject to this kind of glamour that makes up seem down and down seem up. So well-intentioned disciples overlook this possibility. Humanity determines its own destiny. Disciples do point the way tactfully, not just saying, like I say to you, well, on page 70 and 71 of such a book, the planets involved in your forthcoming initiation will be found. And I mean, you just can't approach in that manner. Everything has to be more gently and more relatingly approached. And if you can, if Christ spoke of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven to his disciples, which the Bible tells us he did, then we can say, well, what were those mysteries? And then we can open a door to the mysterious teaching of the ageless wisdom. There are many skillful ways to approach, and one must always have in mind the consciousness level of one's interlocutor, as Moria calls it, the person with whom you are speaking. It is humanity and not us that determines its own destiny, because we are humanity, but we are on the borderland of the fifth kingdom, entering the kingdom of souls. Now, more and more people will begin to do that, but that's not everybody. And tact and caution have to be used. Disciples also set the needed example and emphasize, it's a Masonic term, emphasize the ancient landmarks. So basically, he's giving us kind of the Masonic perspective here. And these ancient landmarks are true under all circumstances, and they abide. But they can be differently presented. So I think, that's an important section on what Imperil really is. And it's quite the opposite of the kind of optimism and confidence in the inner God and the kind of joy that the disciple is supposed to have because he's or she is doing the master's work. There's some other ones here. This one's from Esoteric Healing, and it brings in more of the medical, conventional idea of irritation. He says, from these pages 67 and 68, we hear much today about auto-intoxication, and many efforts are made to cure this by diet and the regulation of the life in terms of rhythmic living. Now, that'll be easier and easier during a seventh ray age, and Michael was talking about the law of rhythm. So rhythm is approaching, and the sixth ray is notably unsuitable for promoting and sustaining rhythm. And basically, DK says this is one of the reasons why in the sixth ray age, the outer plane is such a mess, because people are just going by impulse. The veil of impulsion is operating. So all this is good and of help, but it does not constitute a basic cure, as its protagonists would lead us to believe. Irritation. Now, this is perhaps a more medical, psychological approach. Irritation is a basic psychological complaint and has its roots in the intensification of the astral body, which definitely produces abnormal effects upon the nervous system. Okay, what Moria says is basically a precipitation of poison against the walls of the nervous system, and it reminds us that Assagioli says that every thought leaves its physical precipitate, no matter how minuscule that precipitate may be. Things tend to physicalize, and hence psyche and soma are related, and we have these psychosomatic diseases, which does not mean that they're not real. So often these days, a doctor might say to you, well, this is just psychosomatic. In other words, as if it is not a real disease. But psyche, especially the astral part of it, can cause a great many physical diseases as they work through the etheric body first. So irritation, what does he say? It is the disease of self-interest, of self-sufficiency, and of self-satisfaction. So this factor of pride, of looking at yourself as high and others as low, this idea of superiority mentioned in the earlier reference, this accompanies the irritable attitude. They are stupid and I could do better. I don't approve. When will they wake up? And so forth. And when you really do see abuses occurring, it's hard not to fall into this attitude. We just have to remember that we may be disciples now, but it was not always so. And we have gone in other times through periods of quite dense ignorance when we were maybe a source of irritation to those who knew better at the time. So again, I would say, he says, ponder on these terms. For these three aspects of irritation are of general discovery. We will therefore, page 68 here, deal with irritation imperil, as it is called by exponents of the first ray, such as Master M. And maybe he does go on and do that, and maybe I didn't really copy that down as I should have. I'm not sure, but we have enough to think about anyway. You can go a little bit beyond. You can go to page 67 and 68 and see if he carries on the discussion. Okay, and let's. Well, actually, he does in the same book carry on the discussion. So maybe I do have it here. And I'm not at all sure that we can get through all of it, nor necessarily should we today, because it's certainly a subject that is worth considering. We're about to take up that subject of the dweller on the threshold, but maybe we should really make sure we work with irritation and its deeper understanding first. Okay. We'll do a little more. These problems will demonstrate to you, we'll have to go back and see what they are, how intensely difficult it is for men to face up to life. Well, there's a general statement, isn't it? How intensely difficult it is for us to face the circumstances with which we are presented. It will be obvious that the problems of worry, now Leadbeater really comments on that quite a bit, and the ill effects psychically within the aura of worry, fear and worry. It will be obvious that the problems of worry and irritation, so here he includes both, called by the Master Moria Imperil, are many and must be considered. Now, worry brings about a negative anticipation and an unhappy prognostication and a certain cynicism and belief that things will work out badly. We lose confidence in the inner God, and we lose confidence in the good law. So we have to consider these, the problems of worry and irritation. And so for the first time, we have the idea of worry combined with that of irritation to give us what we think of as imperil from Moria's point of view. Now, this is really interesting. And why are these difficulties of the astral body? Well, maybe Kamamanus is somewhat involved as well. Why are they so perilous and so serious? Why? And we're getting some straight answers here in case we are inclined to be that way. I think I was born as a worrier, you know. I had a friend who's now a psychiatrist at Yale University, and his mother was a brilliant woman, and he's had, you know, he's a Capricorn, and he's had a successful career dealing with obsessive compulsive neurosis, which, you know, are the patterns that we cannot evade, and they keep on recurring. They are really, in a way, an aspect of Maya. And his mother was funny because she used to take us on walks. We were just 4 years old or 5 years old. And she called him Whiny Wart and me Worry Wart. So I was born with this tendency to worry, which I've tried to overcome. And, you know, how successful that's been, I don't know. But those complaints, those skandhas come with us, you know, and they incline us towards certain behaviors which are perilous and serious. So if you want to know about worry, you can consult with me and I'll tell you all the good things that it can do. Anyway, Why are they so dangerous? Why are they so serious? Number one, they lower the vitality of the man to such a point that he becomes susceptible to disease. Now, Leonie Hodgson, at the last conference that we had, she emphasized this in her excellent presentations. The scourge of influenza. Remember, 50 million people were wiped out after World War I. The scourge of influenza has its roots in fear and worry. And once the world settles down to freedom from the present fearful condition, we shall see the disease die out. So that's really something to consider. There, the psyche and soma are really connected. That's a great danger. And now I hear that, well, the God of our planet has something in mind for us because is it in Kazakhstan or is it, in Central Asia, but some kind of very deadly pneumonia, much more deadly than the coronavirus, has been arising. And the question is, how far does it spread? It's a type of flu, a type of influenza. So Sanat Kumara has something in mind here to purify and purge humanity. Why also dangerous? They are so highly infectious from the astral point of view that they lower in a peculiar manner the astral atmosphere and thus make it hard for people in the astral sense to breathe freely. And somewhere, is it Moria that sounds like him? He's talking about the effect of pepper dust in the air. Everybody begins to sneeze. And this is, an analogy to the transmission of astral irritability. We have seen how fast it can occur. Number three, because the astral conditions of fear, worry, and irritation are so widespread today that they might be regarded as epidemic in a planetary sense. So first come these psychological conditions, and they lead to deadly physical conditions such as the Spanish flu. It shouldn't be called the Spanish flu, but somehow it was, and I'm not sure that anybody knows where it arose, but the estimate is that 50 million people died in it, and through the first wave and the second wave, which was much worse. Okay, why so dangerous? Because irritation, I speak not here of worry, is inflammatory in its effects. It does remind you of Mars, the planet of irritation and the planet of inflammation. It's inflammatory in its effects, and inflammation is hard to bear and leads to much difficulty. It is interesting to note that certain forms of eye trouble are caused by this, and there we have Aries, the head, Mars, and so forth, involved as rulers of the eyes. And point number 5, maybe the most important thing for those of us that are studying glamour, because worry and irritation prevent true vision. They shut out the view. The man who is the victim of these conditions sees nothing but the cause of his complaints and is so submerged through self-pity, self-consideration, or in a focused negative condition that his vision is narrowed and his group hindered. Remember that there is group selfishness as well as individual selfishness. Well, those are sufficient reasons, wouldn't you say, that we should avoid as much as possible through confidence in the inner God, this attitude of worry and irritation. I have cited, he says, sufficient reasons for the effects of worry and irritation to demonstrate to you the wideness of the difficulty. It is not much use at this time to talk of the remedy. One does not say to an influenza patient, when the worst throes of the disease are upon him, "There is nothing the matter. Pay no attention. Get up and go about your business." It is no use to say to men today, "Do not fear. Leave off worrying. All will be well." They will not believe you, for one thing, and that is fortunate, for it is not true. As a matter of fact, today we're going to take up the glamour of fear, which is a major foundational glamour, especially for those who carry a lot of the second ray in their nature. Things are not well, and humanity and the planetary life are not well. This the hierarchy knows and is working for the amelioration of the conditions. When the throes of the planetary influenza are over and the patient does not die, then investigation can be made and effort produced which can prevent a recurrence. And, just from the point of view of medical attainment, there are now vaccines for the different types of influenza, and we identify them. And that was not the case when the death toll was so high due to the exhaustion of humanity following the First World War. So then investigation can be made, and it has been made. It seems much more difficult, however, to deal with the current virus than with the influenza epidemic, but then, of course, much more time was taken developing these vaccines. At present, all that can be done is to keep the patient quiet and also keep the fever down so we don't get this crystallization, condensation of protein with a excessively high fever. This is the work of the new group of world servers and the intelligent men of goodwill, and their name is Legion. Well, I think that may be enough. There's a little more to do next time, but I feel that, we run the risk of overload if we do too much more. So let's see here. So this will be the end of readings. Well, let me just get this straight. End of readings on 10 July 20. And we'll take up the next one. And we'll go on, well, we'll see how we do. We'll probably go on to the question of the dweller on the threshold.
Michael?
Yes. BL? Yes.
I'm sorry, before the other Michael gets to the questions and comments that we've got, I just wanted to mention that Yvonne, one of our students, she did a synthetic paper for her level 1 course on Imperil. It's a compilation on Imperil, and it ties in things from the compilation that we have on the AWC site, as well as, she's a student of Master Moira and his Agni yoga books. So she brought that into it as well. So those of you who have access to the student papers on campus, please look up Yvonne's synthetic paper, the compilation on Imperil. And for those of you who don't, what I'll do, Yvonne, if you don't mind, I can put your email in the chat so they can email you and ask you for a copy of your paper.
Okay, Yvonne, she's a nurse, right? Correct? Yeah, you have been?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine, BL. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the paper.
You're
very on topic today.
Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be great. And we'll, certainly that's what these papers are for, to become resources for other students and those who are in general interested in the subject. So great. Then BL and Yvonne, you see to that it will be made available. Thank you. Now, this is time to, as I say, this is going to be the end of this program and the Imperil compilation, and we'll say reading 90 and, whoops, one paragraph remains in the little Imperil. There were only 8 references in the little Imperil compilation. Okay, so here's Yvonne's in the chat box, the email, and maybe BL and Yvonne, you figure out the best way to get this distributed to people who may be interested. I would appreciate that.
Michael, we would also, if we could get a copy of your Imperil compilation as well.
Sure. I mean, sure. I can.
Because you added to it. We have one on the AWC compilation, but you added to it just as Yvonne did with her paper. So.
Okay, I'll send that to you, BL. And
thank you. And then I'll post it with the recording.
Excellent. Appreciate that very much. Okay, friends. Now it is an interesting subject, and it deals with something to which all of us have been prone and maybe are still prone. I can tell you for myself that when I look at the way the COVID-19 pandemic is being handled in the United States, it would be no difficulty for me to slip into the kind of irritation that DK describes, because I think it's such, it's basically, if I can say, murder through the instrumentality of egotism. I know those are harsh words, but the Christ consciousness is about self-sacrifice for the sake of others, not about sacrificing others for the sake of one's lower ego. So, am I irritated about that? Well, I do have confidence that the ideals that America stands for will rise to the occasion. There are other countries too which are suffering in a similar way, but none of them so blatantly, if I may say. And the curious thing is that the dictators who have maybe more control over what their country does are in position to do a better job and seem to be doing it in the containment of the possible reappearance, recrudescence of the disease. So I don't think we've seen anything yet, and that's one of the reasons we're meditating today on the glamour of fear. Fundamental glamour. It is the major dweller on the threshold for our particular planet, DK tells us. Okay, so now you can give me, we have some statements being made here, and I have that, I have 3 of them, Michael.
Well, Kim asked about a downloadable document for this, and BL just talked about that with you, getting what you've been working on with this compilation, which will be posted on the Makara website along with the recording. And then Kim also writes, this is very interesting and so relevant to how many are responding to the current situation. I see it a lot on social media.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a psychological, spiritual test for humanity, and the means of applying this test is physical. I mean, our values are being challenged now, and do we care more for the symbol of money, which is strictly a symbolical system, or do we really care for the welfare, the quality of life of our fellow human beings? It's a great battle at the moment between the negative aspects of the third ray and the more positive promise of the second ray. So we as students of esotericism, have to look into the real causes, and even though we can't run around shouting the truths of esotericism, even though, as has been said, the mysteries will be shouted from the rooftops. I mean, to a certain extent, that is true. But we cannot imagine that the many, many people who are in rebellion, who will not take even the necessary precautions which can protect their near ones and dear ones, that they will be in any condition to listen to esoteric explanations for what is happening. So we have to find other ways to emphasize humanitarianism, and that is fortunately being done. I would say the humanitarianism of many people and the heroism of the medical staff, not just the heroism of soldiers and generals for whom there are stone statues that have to be preserved. These things are being emphasized. The heroism, the humanitarianism, the heroism of humanitarianism is being emphasized by so many, and that's a very good thing. I think, really, I think it will prevail. DK talks about the future. He talks about Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States as 3 very important nations where social experiments are going on. And then he talks about things that will be happening in 2035. It's not inevitable, but he talks about the legislation for the welfare of children and all of that as if a much more cooperative relation between these countries is emerging. And that is really, it gives you the feeling that we'll all be around and we have somehow prevailed over the inevitable selfishness when the light really intensifies. So we all have high hopes, confidence in the inner God, and with that positivity and the joy of doing the Master's work, we can avoid the worry and the irritation, which are so destructive. Yes.
Next, Heike writes, in some way or other today, all of these can be an important subject to observe and learn to work through those moments of imperil. Uncertainty, annoyance, criticism, unhappiness, feeling of superiority. I have everyday life moments of each of those welling up in today's world situation of these last months, and see them as opportunities to realize them and work them off. Great opportunity, much observance needed, and I had not known that these reactions might be in me still. But such moments, maybe of old habits I thought I had overcome, come to light now. I had not known that they are part of what is called imperil. Thanks for talking about the subject. Very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, Heike. Yes, this is a subject that is relevant to all of us. So often we think we have overcome something, and the vestiges of it and the roots of it remain. There are some fundamental things, and the correct assessment of identity will kill off many illusions and glamours. If we realize what we are and where we're going and how to get there, and we realize that in terms of reliable methods, then we're much less likely to suffer from these retrogressive moments which take us back to things we thought we had overcome. So what you say is relevant to all of us, and thank you.
And Jesse writes, harsh words, but very true.
Yeah.
And then Kim adds, I work as a health coach specializing in helping people heal from chronic health conditions through stopping stress, worry, unhealthy thinking, and behaving. So yes, absolutely, the mind and emotions cause the physical condition. Adds, what do you mean by, I don't think we've seen anything yet?
Okay, here we go. By the way, Kim also has said that worry is mentally rehearsing what we don't want to happen. I think that's a good way of describing it. You know, negative anticipation, and basically, since thoughts are things, we condition a more negative future by using negative anticipation. So I think we really have to turn that around and mentally rehearse what we really do want to happen. You know, the Christ pretty much said it, that whatsoever shall be asked in my name, and with faith in the response, shall see it accomplished. So we are very responsible for the kind of thought life that we generate and which we put out onto the mental plane. And as students of esotericism, we do realize that, even though the average non-aspiring individual will think, well, that's just some idea. That's not a reality. Okay. So you're in the right field in terms of this subject, definitely. Now, let's see, we have...
Yvonne writes, and Suzanne, I see your hand, but Yvonne writes, in the Esoteric Healing webinar, Nicole mentioned that the cause of COVID-19 is fear, irritation, and worry.
Well, these are good candidates. If we look for the the word universal epidemic, we will see that a number of times Sanat Kumara has intended to use such epidemics to purify humanity and actually talk about harsh ideas to get rid of forms which are no longer suitable. And I suppose we're talking about human forms as well. I mean, there is some carryover into the animal kingdom, but just look up universal epidemic and you'll see how such a thing had been planned, possibly, for the Second World War. But humanity took care of certain things itself. And, you know, humanity frequently goes astray, and intervention by very powerful sources can occur. The thing that shocked me the most is the planned intervention, not of Shambhala, but of the solar logos in the latter days of the First World War. I can only imagine if the intervention of Shambhala is such a drastic medicine, if you will, what would the intervention of the solar logos have been? But again, DK said humanity managed to solve its own problems in that regard. Well, maybe Sanat Kumara, looking on, maybe determined that humanity was not solving its own problems with respect to very dangerous trends. I'm recalling what the Tibetans said about capitalism, which means basically to me valuing the symbol of money and desire over human welfare. It doesn't mean there are not wonderful things about the innovation that may go with that and which are stifled under other systems. But DK said capitalism has emerged and wrecked the world. Now talk about harsh statements. Capitalism has emerged and wrecked the world. Now, you know, one of the big challenges now is what's going to happen to the world economy under the pressure of this pandemic. And obviously, revisions are needed and a more humanitarian approach to the handling of resources and the symbol which is equivalent to fulfilling desire, namely money. Let's see where this leads, because I think that big economic change is in process now. Okay, let's. Yvonne has something else here, doesn't she, Michael? Oh, okay. She says the COVID 19 virus. Okay. Now, Aunt Veronica has something, right?
Well, I wanted to go to Suzanne, who's had her hand raised, but
Okay.
Suzanne, you are self-muted.
Okay.
And just took her hand down.
Whoop.
There, yeah.
There you are.
Oh, okay. Am I heard?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a small and simple but useful anecdote to my own daily exposure to worry and irritation. After I take my vitamins, I view the prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I I have it posted in my bathroom, so I visit it quite a few times a day, and I'm reminded that this is one of the ways to possibly help with my exposure to daily worry and irritation. Thank you, Michael, for this enlightening and very timely reminder.
We do have our places to post these. I want to say, what's on my refrigerator? It's the same thing, Anybody with cancer rising like I do makes frequent trips to the refrigerator. So I'm always seeing, I'm always seeing the poem Invictus. You probably know of this poem. It means unconquerable. It's a very first ray poem. And I don't know how many of you know this poem, but maybe I'm doing a little service if I point it out to you. If I can do that, I'm sure all I have to do is, it just is such a stirring poem, and it's one of those ones I believe that Nelson Mandela used when he was imprisoned. So, and for a whole Saturn cycle, he was imprisoned. So Invictus, Invictus, and maybe Invictus poem. I'm going to read it if I can. It's by William Ernest Henley, and I don't know when it was written. I know you love poetry, Suzanne, and
Yes.
and this is a very bold thing. He says, "Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." And I think a lot of us know that as, I am the captain of my soul. So you can understand how Nelson Mandela, why this would be so important to him.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a first ray, sixth ray kind of statement, and it's a wonderful thing. I think so.
Thank you.
So anyway, I just throw it in there for good measure. Now let's.
Michael?
Yes. Is that BL? Yes?
Yes. I just wanted to add, darn it, I'm going to cry.
Okay. Yeah.
Prince Harry selected this poem as the basis for his Invictus Games, which honor, and it's there for athletes, they're for warriors who lost limbs.
Right.
And so they used it. These people recovering, they used this a lot during the games, but it's a very moving poem, and I'll go cry in quiet now.
No, but thank you for that. When you're dealing with warriors who have been wounded and still are struggling on, and in a manner unconquerable, and you're dealing maybe even with Special Olympics, for people and for children and all of that, the unconquerable soul, okay? Doesn't make any difference what ray you're on. The soul is unconquerable. So thank you for bringing that up. That's really good to know. Really good to know. Okay, let's, Michael, there's a little bit more, isn't there?
Yes, there's a lot more. And Veronica writes, what do you do? How can you help protect yourself and others when you feel your solar plexus becomes activated with worry, anxiety, fear? It puts to test everything. How do you protect?
Um, okay, it's different for everybody, but I would use the sevenfold method of divine love, which DK gave to Roberto Assagioli, and he says, not only does it spread love everywhere, but it offers protection. He says, instead of building a shell around yourself through imagination, which was one of the old theosophical methods, this is much more salubrious, much more healthy to do it this way. And I think you can look it up. Do you have the CD-ROM? Michael, do you know where to find that, or BL or Joe? I could go into my Alice Bailey extracts. It will be there, sevenfold. The sevenfold wheel of loving protection. Here it is. So I'll just read it, and then maybe we could put this down too in our the paper I'm going to send out to everybody. I would ask you, as far as you possibly can, to insulate yourself from fear and from the effect of the world situation and its allied problems. The future for you is planned, and you can take the right steps through the power of your illumined mind. I would ask you to carry forward this insulation along the line of love, using the ancient method which has been called the wheel of living fire, which burns not, but ever heals. It's quite a name, isn't it? The wheel of living fire, which burns not, but ever heals. The method is occult and safe and constitutes no barrier to relationships, as does the building of a separative wall. And the method is as follows. See before you a wheel of fire with 7 spokes. See it immediately before your eyes. Then, by an act of the creative imagination, see yourself standing in the center of at the hub of the wheel, and there regard yourself as if you were that hub. From that central position, send out 7 streams of living love, radiating upon the world. Obviously, they're going to be ray streams. When you do this, you serve and are at the same time completely protected. This exercise can become instantaneous and effective. It generates a protective force and at the same time makes you a living center of light and love. So let me put that, somehow I'm adding things here. And it's right here, Glamour. Use this, and I'll put in the seven streams of living love. This is going to be, sent to our communications team, and it'll be available to you. So that's the best answer I can give. DK gives the method, and it really does help with the whole solar plexus fear problem, fear, anxiety, worry, irritation, all that. It gives a great confidence using the energy of love. So hopefully, give it a try, and Veronica. Give it a try. Okay.
Kim adds, a lot of people think worry is an emotion, but it's not. It's an unhealthy mental habit.
Hmm. And I would say that it's chemomonastic in the sense that it's often accompanied by emotion, you know, the feeling toned thoughts. One of our tasks is to separate manas from kama. And for many, many people, they just are inseparable. Every time you think, you feel. Every time you feel, you think. So we have the negative emotions which accompany the negative anticipations. And that makes for the real problem. It's not, as you say, it's not strictly an emotional thing. Thoughts are accompanying it in the chemomonastic field to which many are subject. So thanks for bringing that up. And
we have a number more comments, which perhaps since we are continuing this next week,
right,
we should bring them up then so that we can
right,
do a good meditation on
right. Let's. So
dissipating
can
the
you
glamour of
save
fear.
these, Michael? Can you save these? The one, yeah, because they're quite a bit more,
So,
and we'll never get
so
through it all here. So
right.
we will. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So I'll
So
work on that.
okay, just pull it all together, and then we'll continue with some of the thoughts that you have, all of you have brought up. That'll be great. And so we will go on, and I think Tuya, you here? You are here with us, are you not? I believe. I think you are. I thought I saw you. Wait a second. Let's make sure.
She's on staff side.
Yeah, she is, but she's self-muted. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. I don't know how we get through to her because she's not here with me. She has other things she has to do. Um, hmm. So I don't think if we can't get through.
Okay, do you hear me?
Okay.
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 Yes,
You
I just cannot unmute myself. It just takes always time. Michael, if you can do that, it would be
okay.
good
I will
because
do
I
it.
am.
I'll do it. Yeah, you're involved in other things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Now let's see.
Thank you.
Formula. Yeah, here it is. Okay. And Michael, get together these things and please send them out to those who are enrolled in this glamour work. And so we'll have something to think about. Yeah, I thought somehow attending to the glamour of fear, which is fundamental glamour and is considered so important with respect to the planet. It is the dweller on the threshold for the entire planet, this fear reaction. So although it's very general, it has an aspect of itself in all the other glamours. we misidentify ourselves as that which is capable of being annihilated, and we do not identify with the inner God. And as a result, when we view the possibility of our own eradication, annihilation, etc., cessation of being, we tend to fear. Maybe that's the deep cause of it all. But there's more, and there are many types of fears, and along the different ray lines. But let's let's go into this now. So there are quite a few of us here. I did name who we were, and I think I'm not going to rename right now, but just to honor that you are all here and the attendees. If you wish to see who is here, you can do that. So we just take the 40-something of us and have a few moments of silence as we get the sense of our own group participation in this process. And we're going to use a protective formula with the cross of divinity, forehead, heart, left eye, right eye. He calls it the cross of divinity. And as we make the sign of that cross, we will use the mantra that he has given us. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point, I never move. Trace the light along the cross. And as we do that, of course, a greater cross is formed as protection for the whole group. So we go through the preparatory stages. We focus on the dual light of matter and mind, pretty much etheric physical light and the light of the lower mind. And we bring them together on the plane of mind. And then we meditate on soul contact, and we attempt to recognize soul light, to get the feel of it and its distinction from the light of matter and the light of lower mind. And because we're working in a group, that light is intensified, and we bring it down through the imagination to the lower mental plane, and we blend the three types of light: matter, mind, and soul light. And as we blend this variety of lights, we use a mantram followed by the sacred word. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So we'll use now the formula, and we will be visualizing a great searchlight that the group can use to reveal where glamour is found and also to help dissipate that glamour. So we project our beam onto the astral plane, and as we do so, we will use this formula. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And we strengthen the beam, our group beam, with spiritual will, ultimately coming from the monad, but through the soul, the jewel, and the sacrifice petals. And we, as we visualize this strengthening of our beam, we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And our goal is to work upon the dissipation of the glamour of fear. Our correct attitudes have to do with confidence in the inner God and the joy of the soul and whatever else may work for you. In addition to the technical methods DK gives us. So we think for a moment about what this glamour of fear has done within the human psyche over the millions of years. And it certainly has held humanity back. The members of the counterforce consider it a very bad sign when the disciple is fearless. And so we use these words of power along with our power of visualization. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of fear. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of fear. And now we'll have 5 minutes of silence, and we can continue penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakness and its dissipation. So 5 minutes of silent intensity of purpose as we see the work proceeding. And if we can conquer this one, it goes a long way towards conquering all the others. So we withdraw our dissipatory beam of light from the astral plane back onto the mental plane, and the three lights again return to their proper place. We refocus ourselves upon the mental plane, which has the mind held steady in the light. And we act as if some little bit of work has been accomplished and some little bit of movement towards the mastery of this ancient glamour has been achieved. And we sound then the Om 3 times. One for each of the personality vehicles, seeing, as it were, the beneficent effect of our work upon each of the personality vehicles within humanity: etheric, physical, astral, and lower mental. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and for your thoughts. Tomorrow we continue with the Soul of Nations. It'll be an evening Ask presentation, and then Sunday, attracting resources for the hierarchical work. And quite soon we'll be working with the Esoteric United Nations again around the time of the new moon, and we will set up an opportunity for those of you who want to know more about it and who have not yet made your commitment to have the opportunity to do so. So the two programs, tomorrow and the next day, are on our live link from YouTube. And we'll see you then. We'll see you then, those of you that can. Okay, lots of love and many blessings from Tuya and myself and the whole team sponsoring these webinars. And we'll be back with more as we go along, and I'll be sending out to Michael, BL, and Joe what we have looked at today, our little compilation. And I think you'll have Yvonne's compilation available and her work in this field. Okay. Bye for now.